If you look at the history books about Yerushalayim, people who came to Yerushalayim from the times of the Churban and onward, we find how they describe how Yerushalayim is an unbelievably desolate, filthy, degrading place. And many times I've taken walks in the old city, and you have some kind of a smattering of a feeling of something like that. And I wonder, why is that so? There's actually a question amongst the Paiskim nowadays. If one goes to Yerushalayim, is it called b'churbonoi and he has to rip kriya? Or is it called b'vinyonoi because there are Jews there? That is not the subject of the shiur. This is not a halachic shiur. But I think everybody understands and agrees that definitely to a certain level, Yerushalayim is lacking in its big b'vinyonoi. The Ramban writes in a letter. After he came to Eretz Yisrael, he writes to his family about what Eretz Yisrael looks like. And he says, Yerushalayim is pathetic. And if you go to the Golan, the Galil, their things are way better. And he explains. He says the reason that is so is the greater the Kedusha there is in a place, when there is Churban there, the Churban is even greater. So yes, there was Churban in the Golan, in the Galil, but not as great as the Churban that happened in Yerushalayim, Tzion, and the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, in those places which were infused with so much more ritual spirit, richnesses, the Churban is that much greater, and we see the desolateness to a greater extent than we do in other places in Eretz Yisrael. Indeed, we live here in Eretz Yisrael, and we see from day to day. My family comes to Beit Shemesh regularly. Many of you are in Beit Shemesh all the time and don't look around. I recall when I came to Beit Shemesh, assuming the position that I was given in the Rav of Shalom, the questions of yichud that existed on the road going from Ramah Aleph to 38. This is before Kvish Eser was around. And there was a question of yichud on going the road between Aleph and Bet. There was no buildings preceding the Merkaz Mischari. Now when someone turns in the road off of 38, there's almost skyscrapers up at the mountain. You pass by Dalit, Gimel, and on the right they're building more, En Gedi, an unbelievable amount of building going on, and Yerushalayim has a surgence of Kedusha. We live in a place, Ramat Beit Shemesh, that has a great amount of Erlich Hayidin serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which infuses the place with unbelievable Kedusha. However, we're not there yet. I'd like to discuss the Churban, the low point of the Churban, and our time. The Gemara tells us that when the captors came into the Beis HaMikdash and they went into Kodesh HaKadoshim, they found the two Kruvim in an embrace. And there's a question, why was this like this? The Gemara tells us otherwise, Bizman Sheisol Oisim Ritzonai Shalmakom, that the Kruvim are together. When they do what they're supposed to be doing, serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu properly, they are in an embrace. And when they're Einam Oisim Ritzonai Shalmakom, the Kruvim look away one another. It seems that it should be at the time of the Churban, when Klal Yisrael is leaving. Klal Yisrael is leaving Eretz Yisrael, being kicked out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu dissatisfied with them, that should be the time that we find them looking askew at each other. Why is it that it's exactly at that time that we find them in an embrace? This question is asked by many of the Mefarshim, and there are a variety of answers given to this question. I would like to mention some, and I would like to expound upon one of them. There's one answer that has to do with something we spoke about this morning. Chilul Hashem. If the guy would see that there's a lack of accord between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chilul Hashem would be great. I will just mention Rav Yitzchak Isaac Sher points out when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is worried about the Chilul Hashem amongst the Goy atrocities. We find twice in the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on behalf of Klal Yisrael after the Chet HaEgel, and he says, if you're not going to be mechaper, not going to let the Jews have a kapara, you're going to destroy them. What will the Goyim say? And so too, after the destruction of the Tisha B'Av night, again, Moshe Rabbeinu pleads that there will be a Chilul Hashem, that people will say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't take us into the land. The Chilul Hashem we're talking about, not of tzaddikim, we're talking about a Rishoyim, and yet that Chilul Hashem is great enough to cause HaKadosh Baruch Hu to forgive Klal Yisrael. If that Chilul Hashem is great enough to cause that HaKadosh Baruch Hu make a nest and have the Kruvim embrace one another, that people should know that deep down there is a strong connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, and we are not despised. An uplifting thought. No matter how bad we are, it will only get better because HaKadosh Baruch Hu truly loves us. However, I would like to add this focus on a different answer, an original answer of mine, and I think that it's really based on the answer which we gave before. What was the position that the Kruvim were built originally? Were they built in an embrace, or were they built askew? It seems to me that the natural position of the Kruvim is that they should be in an embrace. The unnatural position is when they look askew one to another. Kolzman that Klal Yisrael is acting as they're supposed to act. We're going to have prosperity. We're going to have goodness. We're going to have all that we need. And Rabbi said that is the teva. That embrace that is mirrored by the way the Kruvim interact shows us that's the natural relationship between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Klal Yisrael acts unnaturally, doing Averas, which is unnatural for the natural pros of Klal Yisrael, the Kruvim also take on a natural pose, and they are askew one another. So what do we see when they take the Kruvim out? HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't doing anything. It's to show to the world that this is the natural position between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara tells us the Beis Hamikdash was lit on fire in the eve of Tisha B'Av exactly at this time, and it burnt on the Asiri. The blaze that consumed the Beis Hamikdash, the bulk of it happened on Asiri. The Maral asks, why did Chazal choose Asiri? And the Maral answers, because Asiri Kodesh. Asiri is always the holiness, everything coming together in Kedusha. And just like the Kedusha comes together on Asiri, the Churban also happens on Asiri. Those are the words of the Maral, and those words need to be explained, and I found an explanation on them, which I'd like to share with you. The Churban of the Bayis is not Churban. The Churban of the Bayis is a stage in ultimate growth. The Churban of the Bayis is there so that we should eventually get back to where we're supposed to be. I mentioned this Tisha B'Av already. The fact that the Churban, I mentioned this on the Tuesday night shiur, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lit the Eitzim V'Avonim on fire, that was a diversion tactic. Really, we should have been totally destroyed, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out his anger al Eitzim V'Avonim, and by doing so, it diverted the anger from Klal Yisrael, and we were spared. Therefore, Tisha B'Av afternoon, when the actual Churban started on the Eitzim V'Avonim, Klal Yisrael, so to speak, was able to breathe a sigh of relief. And indeed, it's a sigh, but indeed, it's a relief, because the Chamasa is al Eitzim V'Avonim, and we were spared. This is of sitting on the chair, even though right now the Beis Hamikdash is ablaze. It's ablaze on Chi going into Asiri, and because the blaze itself is something which is Kodesh. Tisha B'Av is a time that Mashiach is born. Why is Tisha B'Av a time that Mashiach is born? It's for the same reason. There is salvation born out of the destruction. I'd like to share with you an insightful thought from Rav Mendel Kaplan, Zatzal. I think I said this over once, but it's worthwhile saying another 20 times. He was walking in the halls of the yeshiva, and he heard a bacher speaking with unbelievable chutzpah to his parents, and he tells the bacher, that's no way to speak to your parent. The bacher shapes up and acts properly, and after he gets off the phone, he asks his Rabbi, how did you know I was speaking to my parents? And Rav Mendel smiled and said, somebody speaks with so much chutzpah, it can only be to a parent. Why is that so? Because the parent love is unconditional. I can never abuse it to the point that my parents will disown me, and therefore a person will press the limits. Says Rav Mendel Kaplan, if you're speaking with so much chutzpah, it would be a friend, it would be an uncle, they wouldn't tolerate it, they'd hang up on you. But you abuse the love of your parents, and you speak with so much chutzpah because you're biting the hand that feeds you. The one that's feeding you love, that's the one you're biting. Klal Yisrael, we said in the Kiddush today, and the reason why they did that is they felt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will tolerate it. They understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for them has no bounds, has no end, and therefore they can do whatever they want, and they are indestructible because they are the apple in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eye, and there is no wrong. Anything they do, somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu will cover up for them. This is what happened by his Rishon. This is what happened by his Sheni. Klal Yisrael felt that we will be able to have the best of both worlds, have a Mahaza and have a Olam Haba, and that is not the case. We look for the Beis Hamikdash. What is there about the Beis Hamikdash that we're looking for? What we're looking for is the Olam Kitikunoi, the world coming back to the way it was supposed to be originally. We end off the kinna of Eicha. Hashivenu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kikedem. We want to have our days renewed, kimei kedem, like the days of yesteryear, the days of before. And the Gemara asks, what is the word kedem referring to? And the Gemara tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Adam Arisha mikedem. We want to have a tshuva that we should come back to be like Adam Arisha. Who was Adam Arisha? Adam Arisha was Yitzir Kapov HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was created out of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bare hands, Kaviyachol. He was a human with a body that was made from the dirt of the ground, and yet the neshama which he possessed was so holy that he could walk around unclad and not be ashamed, because there was no taiva, there was no averis. He lived a world of total kedusha. Chadesh Yameinu Kikedem means that we want to live in a life of so much purity of kedusha v'tahira that no matter, there is no wrong in our world. That's the wishing that we have as we finish off our Eicha. That's one man diyamar in the Gemara. The other man diyamar says Kimei Shloimo. As we say at the end of Shemona Esrei, Kishonim Kadmoniyos. We want to have the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt. Kimei Shonim Kadmoniyos, as in the times of Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech's times were unusual times. If you look at the timeline of Klal Yisrael, that was the time which Klal Yisrael had its heyday. We had the Beis Hamikdash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu living amongst us, Kahaviyachol, Kimei Kedem, like Adam Arisha, and we were working our fields, Zoreya, Choresh, Kaitzer. We worked the fields, Ish Tachas Gafnoi, B'Te'enoi, and we went Midonbad, Beersheba. We didn't find a person who was not fluent in all of the halachas of the most complicated halachas of Kedusha v'Tahira. Chadesh Yameinu Kikedem. We take 3 steps back after Shemona Esrei and we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this tefillah is great, this discussion with you is unbelievable, and we understand that our tefillahs will be answered, but we want Yameinu Kikedem. We want to have the Madrega of Adam Arisha. We want to have the Madrega of Shlomo HaMelech. We want to be, so to speak, picture perfect. We want to be the children that give nachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Klal Yisrael, before the Churban bias, were at such a low, they believed they can do whatever they wanted. They believed no harm could come to them. But once that match ignited the Beis Hamikdash, automatically Klal Yisrael understood that even a father has a level of tolerance, and we are being thrown out. If we're being thrown out, then we stop to think, who is this our father? Who is this that gave us all the glory that we have? And Klal Yisrael does tshuva. Klal Yisrael on Tisha B'Av, when they saw the Beis Hamikdash burning, they did tshuva. They did an unbelievable tshuva, but that tshuva was too late. The Beis Hamikdash is already burning, and the decree went away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed. But that's only a phase. There's the next phase. There's the phase of Mashiach. The time that the Beis Hamikdash is being burned, we can reroute and we can bring about a Mashiach. We can never have what was had before, but we can have something new. We can have the Beis Hamikdash of Lasid Lavon. That's what it means. The Medrash tells us we have Each of these is referring to a different one of the Malchios and of the Golus that Klal Yisrael had to endure. And the Medrash says, "V'ruach Elokim merachefes al pnei hamoyim ze ruchoi shel Moshiach." Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Sher tells us when everything goes bad and we're all the way on the bottom, ruchoi shel Moshiach is on the verge of being born. Rabbi Isai, I would like to end off with words of urgency. We are right now at that time when Mashiach can be born. We are right now at the time we're at an unbelievable low. And as was said today by the Kinos, we find ourselves in our own personable, palatable gullus. The fact that I'm speaking to you on Zoom is because we're lacking the ava, the achva, the shalom, the reus between one another. There's a level of sinas chinam that we have that makes one person not able to tolerate the other. That's why we have to have social distancing. Do you think that it's caused some kind of a device, some kind of a germ imported from China, that's what caused we have to be on Zoom? Rabbi Sai, that is just the medium. The idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us is that we're lacking Avas Yisrael. We're lacking having ourselves love our fellow Jew. Not only that, we're not loving ourselves. How could it be? And I'm saying words, and I'm saying it to myself, and I'm saying to the Kila, and I'm saying it to all of Klal Yisrael. It's not only here in Eretz Yisrael that Jews started to be closed down again. We have to make sure when we come to our Beis HaMikdash Ma'at that we show the proper decor. We show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we're eager beavers to be there for davening, that we're there to learn and not to have a good time. It's not a social event. I'd like to say that Baruch Hashem, there's improvement. People take it seriously, but it's not enough because this is a time that the Charon Apo of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is on us. It's Tisha B'Av. It's Tisha B'Av right now. Normally this shiur would be said in the shul, and it's not being said there because there's a level of disaccord. The disaccord is not only ben Adam l'chaveroi, it's a disaccord ben Adam l'makom. And as the Eish Ata Itzata, the Eish Ata Osid Livnoisa, we look towards at this time Mashiach. There's a minig, was a minig in Yerushalayim that on Tisha B'Av in the afternoon they would do sponja. This is not the custom today, but the reason that they did it because of a belief that Mashiach is coming on Motzei Tisha B'Av. We can bring him. This is an appointed time. I heard once from Ramosha Shapiro, anybody who's ever been at the Beis Halavayis in Sanhedrin, it says, Moed L'Kol Choy. There's a meeting place. The meeting today that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with no fanfare, no ruffles. We sit on the floor and we bemoan our plight. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol bends down from Shemayim and bends his ear to listen. He wants to know with how much are we really feeling that sorrow and sadness. Do we really want him to come? When he comes, how will we treat him? I've met people that have had shalom bayis problems. And I spoke to therapists. And the therapists say that, if you're going to tell them to separate, they're never going to get back together. That could be true. Kaboisai, we have been separated. Maybe the natural pose is the Kruvim Urim Zeh B'Zeh. But right now I feel that there's a disaccord. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking the other way. we have the belief, we have the confidence that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us another chance and we put our best foot forward, we could come back to the ultimate relationship. Chadei Shameinu Kekedem. We should be like Adam Harishon. We should be Mei Shlomo HaMelech, Ish Tachas Gafnoi V'Te'enoi, and we won't have a situation that will be involved with other kinds of endeavors other than Avodas Hashem. She'ibona Beis Hamikdash b'mheira v'yameinu.